I watched through the telescope as my sister Maya stepped onto the pristine white sand, my silver anklet glinting on her perfectly tanned ankle. She threw her head back and laughed, that tinkling sound she reserved for cameras and rich men, while her friends applauded her beach outfit. She had no idea that the anklet, the one she'd stolen from my jewelry box 3 days ago, had just sealed her fate. But I wasn't at the beach. I was 200 miles away, sitting on the wraparound porch of my mountain lodge, sipping tea that cost more per ounce than the anklet she thought was worth stealing. Because this time, I'd known exactly what was coming. This time, I'd already won. The first time I lived this life, I died on a beach. Not the beach where Maya was currently preening. No, that came later in the story. I died on a different beach, 6 months from now in that original timeline, with my sister's fingerprints metaphorically all over the murder weapon. Well, not murder in the legal sense, but it was murder nonetheless. That first life ended on my 24th birthday, 3 years from now in the old timeline. I'd finally scraped together enough money to take my grandmother to the coast, the trip she'd dreamed of for decades. I'd saved for 2 years, working 3 jobs while my parents showered Maya with their wealth, putting her through graduate school and buying her a condo while I still slept in the converted garage of their estate. We'd been at the beach for less than an hour when it happened. I'd gone into the water, leaving my bag with Grandma on the shore. When I came back, she was on the ground, paramedics surrounding her. Heart attack, they said. The stress of the trip, the heat. One of those things. But I'd seen Maya's car in the parking lot, though she swore she hadn't been there. I'd seen the empty bottle of Grandma's heart medication scattered in the sand, pills she'd taken that morning, now mysteriously gone. I'd seen the smug look in my sister's eyes at the funeral when the will was read and everything went to my parents, who naturally gave it all to their favorite daughter. I died 3 weeks later. Technically, it was a car accident. My brakes failed on a mountain road, but I'd had my car serviced just days before, and the mechanic I'd trusted had been Maya's boyfriend in high school. Convenient. I woke up on the morning of my 18th birthday, 6 years in the past, screaming. The memories hit me all at once that first morning. The years of casual cruelty, the systematic abuse masked as family dynamics, and finally, the twin murders that no one would ever call murders. I lay in my narrow bed in the garage conversion, surrounded by boxes of Maya's old clothes that Mom had insisted I store since I had the space, and I remembered everything. In my first life, I'd thought I was the problem. I'd internalized every criticism, every comparison, every instance of being overlooked. When Dad missed my high school graduation to take Maya shopping for college, I told myself it was because I wasn't interesting enough. When Mom forgot my birthday 3 years in a row but threw Maya elaborate parties, I convinced myself I didn't deserve celebration. When they paid for Maya's degree in art history, she's so creative, but refused to help with my nursing school. You can get loans, honey, you're practical. I worked those 3 jobs and never complained. But now, with 6 years of memories and a second chance, I saw it clearly. I had been the scapegoat, the shadow child, the daughter they kept around to make their golden child shine brighter. And they'd been willing to let me die to keep it that way. I spent that first week of my second life in careful observation, saying nothing, planning everything. I was 18 again, about to graduate high school with 6 years of knowledge about investments, property markets, and most importantly, my family's true nature. I knew, for instance, that in 3 months, my grandmother would slip on the stairs and injure her hip. In my first life, my parents had convinced her to give them power of attorney temporarily to handle her affairs during recovery. They'd never given it back. They'd moved her into a nice facility and slowly drained her accounts, always with a smile and an excuse about medical necessities and keeping her comfortable. I knew that in 1 year, Maya would accidentally submit my college application essay as her own, getting into a prestigious graduate program while my own application was rejected for plagiarism. She'd done it through my laptop while I was at work. I knew that in 2 years I would meet David, fall in love, and bring him home for Christmas, only to watch Maya seduce him at our parents' New Year's party while they encouraged it. They make such a beautiful couple, Mom had said, while I stood in the doorway with champagne I'd bought myself, watching my sister kiss my boyfriend under mistletoe I'd hung. But most importantly, I knew about the anklet. My grandmother had given me that anklet on my 16th birthday in both timelines, a delicate silver chain with tiny bells and charms she'd collected over her lifetime. In my first life, I'd worn it every day until Maya borrowed it for a beach party the summer after my 18th birthday. She never returned it. What I hadn't known in that first life, what I only discovered during the agonizing 3 weeks between Grandma's death and my own, was that the anklet was a marker. Not magical, nothing like that. But it had been a signal in my grandmother's social circle, a very wealthy, very exclusive social circle I'd known nothing about. My grandmother hadn't been poor. She'd been eccentric, living simply by choice, but she'd come from old money. Real money. The kind that doesn't advertise itself, but opens doors the rest of us don't even know exist. The anklet was a known quantity among a certain set. Her set. It meant you were her chosen heir, her beloved, under her protection. In my first life, Maya had figured this out somehow, probably through snooping in Grandma's papers during one of our rare family visits. She'd taken the anklet and worn it to a charity beach event, where she'd been mistaken for the heir apparent. By the time anyone realized the truth, Grandma was dead, and Maya had already ingratiated herself with people I'd never even known existed. My parents had helped her maintain the lie. They'd presented Maya as the devoted granddaughter who'd spent so much time with Grandma, never mind that I'd been the one visiting every week, running errands, sitting through stories I'd heard a dozen times. Maya got the connections, the invitations, the opportunities, and eventually the inheritance my grandmother had meant for me. This time would be different. On my 18th birthday, my second 18th birthday, I did something I'd never done in my first life. I knocked on Grandma's door at 7 in the morning with homemade cinnamon rolls and a proposal. I want to learn everything, I told her, sitting in her cluttered kitchen that smelled of old books and dried lavender. About your life, your family, your friends, everything you never got to teach me. She'd looked at me with those sharp blue eyes that age hadn't dimmed, and something shifted in her expression. "It's about time," she said simply, and I was beginning to think you'd never ask. That's how I spent the spring and summer of my 18th year. While my parents assumed I was working my after-school job at the grocery store, I was actually with Grandma 3 or 4 days a week, learning. She taught me about investments, about the old families that still controlled major industries, about social graces I'd never needed in my first life. She taught me which doors the anklet would open, and more importantly, how to walk through them with my head held high. "Your mother never wanted to know," Grandma told me one afternoon, her gnarled hands wrapped around a teacup. "She wanted the money, but not the responsibility, not the connections, not the legacy. She married your father thinking she'd get all the benefits and none of the obligations. When I told her that wasn't how it worked, she stopped bringing you girls around." "But I visited," I said. "You did, every week like clockwork once you could drive. Your sister came twice, both times to ask for money." Grandma smiled. "I knew which granddaughter deserved the anklet, dear. I've always known." In June, Grandma and I took a trip. Not to the coast, that would come later on my terms, but to the mountains. She owned property there, acres of it, including a beautiful lodge that had been in her family for 4 generations. She'd been keeping it in trust, waiting for the right heir to claim it. "It's yours," she told me on the porch, where I would one day sit with my telescope and watch my sister's downfall from a safe distance. "Papers are already drawn up. On your 19th birthday, it transfers to you, but you can start using it now. Make it yours." I did. The thing about having foreknowledge is that you have to be strategic. You can't reveal your hand too early. You have to let some things play out, even painful things, so that the people around you don't realize the game has changed. So I went through the motions of that summer. I worked at the grocery store where my parents thought I was working, but only 2 days a week. The rest of the time, I was either with Grandma or at the mountain lodge, slowly moving my life there piece by piece. I opened bank accounts in a different city. I made connections through Grandma's network. I enrolled in online classes for a business degree, paid for by a small trust Grandma had set up for me that my parents didn't know about. And I waited. The anklet stayed in my jewelry box, but I didn't wear it. I knew Maya's eyes were on it. She'd already started making comments. "That's such a pretty anklet Grandma gave you. Very vintage. Can I try it on sometime?" I'd smile and say, maybe later, knowing that the longer I made her wait, the more obsessed she'd become. I knew the exact date she'd take it, July 15th, 3 days before the charity beach event. In my first life, I'd been working a double shift. This time, I made sure I was home, made sure my door was unlocked, made sure the anklet was in clear view in a jewelry box that looked more expensive than it was. I watched from the shadows of the garage as she crept in at 2 a.m., using the key she'd copied years ago. Another thing I'd learned too late in my first life. She went straight for the jewelry box, her phone flashlight making her face glow ghostly in the dark. She grabbed the anklet and I saw the triumph in her smile. She had no idea it wasn't the real one. The anklet Grandma had given me was safe in a safety deposit box 2 hours away. What Maya had stolen was a perfect replica I'd had made for $300. My own money, earned and saved, it looked identical to anyone who didn't know better. But to the people at that beach event, the people who knew Grandma's set, who understood the subtle markers of old money, they would know. They would absolutely know. "She's going to wear it to the Cliffside Charity Gala," Grandma said when I told her about the theft. We were sitting on the mountain lodge porch, watching the sun set over peaks that seemed to stretch forever. "I got the invitation. Maya Thornton +1. Your mother pulled some strings, called in favors I didn't know she had left." "Let her," I said calmly. Let them all go. I have other plans for that weekend." Grandma studied me. "You've changed, little bird. There's steel in you now that wasn't there before." Before the death and rebirth, I thought. Before I learned what my family was really capable of. "I learned from the best," I said instead, squeezing her hand. "That weekend, while my family was at the beach, Grandma and I had our own plans." See, I remembered something else from my first life. 3 months after my 18th birthday, in the original timeline, Grandma had suffered a serious fall. My parents had used her recovery to seize control of her affairs, isolating her from friends, making decisions in her best interest that primarily benefited them. In this timeline, that fall was scheduled to happen in 2 weeks. I knew the exact date because I'd been the one to find her, and the image of her lying at the bottom of those stairs had haunted my dreams for years. In my first life, I'd always wondered if it was really an accident. This time, I knew it wasn't. This time, I'd done my homework. I'd gone to her house when everyone was out and found the loose carpet my father had installed at the top of the stairs. The one that would shift under an elderly woman's feet at just the wrong moment. I'd found his measuring tape forgotten in the hall closet. I'd put the pieces together. They'd tried to kill her in my first life. Or at least they'd created a situation where her death or incapacitation was likely, all to get their hands on money they thought was theirs by right of being her daughter and son-in-law. So that weekend, while Maya wore her fake anklet and my parents schmoozed with people they'd never truly fit in with, Grandma and I had contractors in. We renovated her stairs, installed proper railings and non-slip treads. We set up cameras throughout her house, hidden, sophisticated, the kind you'd never notice. And we made plans. "I'm moving to the mountains," I told her on Sunday night. "Not full-time yet, not until I graduate, but I'm making the lodge my base. Will you come with me?" She smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." The fallout from the beach party was immediate and delicious. I heard about it first from Grandma's friend Margaret, a woman in her 70s who wore pearls worth more than my parents' house and could trace her lineage back to the Mayflower. She called Monday morning while I was at the lodge, ostensibly painting my new bedroom, but actually on speakerphone listening to her gleeful report. "Darling, you should have seen it. This girl, your sister I'm told, showed up wearing what was clearly a fake version of your grandmother's anklet. Cheap silver, wrong proportions on the bells, and the clasp was completely wrong. Anyone with eyes could see it was costume jewelry. But the way she was acting, as if she were the heir apparent, dropping your grandmother's name, acting as though she belonged." I made appropriately shocked noises while painting a wall the color of mountain sage. Your mother was with her, of course, introducing her around, and at first people were polite. But then Catherine Westbrook arrived. You know Catherine, dear, she and your grandmother went to school together. And she took one look at that anklet and absolutely froze. She called your grandmother, right? "They're from the party?" I'd been there for that call. Grandma had put it on speaker while I tried not to laugh. "Is Maya your chosen heir, darling?" Catherine had asked. "Because she's here wearing what appears to be a rather poor imitation of your anklet, and your daughter is telling everyone that Maya is the one you're closest to." Grandma's response had been ice-cold perfection. "My heir is my granddaughter who visits me every Tuesday and Thursday, who knows how I take my tea, and who actually listens when I tell my stories." the one whose name appears in my will. I believe you know who I mean, Catherine. We've spoken about her often. The silence on the other end had been profound. Then, I see. How interesting. I think some corrections need to be made here at this party. I'll be in touch. According to Margaret's gleeful report, Catherine had proceeded to eviscerate my mother and sister in the most polite, devastating way possible. No raised voices, no scenes, just a few quiet words to the right people, and suddenly, Maya and my mother found themselves surrounded by cold shoulders and knowing looks. They'd left before dessert was served. Your grandmother's set is talking, dear, Margaret continued. Everyone knows now that there's been some confusion about succession. Some people are wondering if your family was attempting to commit fraud. Others are simply cutting ties. Either way, I'd say your sister's social climbing days are over. Thank you for letting me know, Margaret, I said, keeping my voice appropriately concerned. I'll check on them. I did not, in fact, check on them. My mother called 17 times that day. My father called 9. Maya sent 43 texts, starting with confusion and ending with rage. I answered none of them. I was in the mountains, after all. Cell service was spotty. How could I have known they needed me? When I finally returned their calls Tuesday evening, after my regular visit with Grandma, where we laughed over tea and wedding cakes, she was planning ahead, she said, for my eventual marriage to someone worthy. I played my part perfectly. Beach party? What beach party? I was working all weekend, then came to visit Grandma. What do you mean Maya wore my anklet? That's in my jewelry box. I let them hear me rummaging. Let them hear my gasp. It's gone. Maya, did you take my anklet? The one Grandma gave me? The explosion was immediate. Maya screamed that I'd set her up, that I'd switched the anklet somehow, that I'd sabotaged her. My mother demanded to know what kind of game I was playing. My father, always the peacemaker when it benefited his golden child, suggested that maybe there had been a mix-up and couldn't we all just move past this? Move past Maya stealing from me? I let my voice break a little. She took something Grandma gave me specifically, wore it in public, and apparently tried to impersonate me or something? And you want me to just let it go? It's not that serious, my mother snapped. It's just an anklet. Then why did Maya take it? Why did she wear it to that specific event? Why are you all so upset that I noticed it was missing? Silence. They had no good answers. I'm staying with Grandma for a few days, I said quietly. I think I need some space from the family right now. I hung up before they could respond. The next 3 months were a masterclass in strategic withdrawal. I was always busy when my family called, always at work or with Grandma or studying when they wanted to meet. I moved more and more of my belongings to the mountain lodge, slowly erasing my presence from the garage conversion they'd never actually considered my home. I graduated high school with honors, scholarships and grants I'd applied for with Grandma's help, none of which my parents knew about. They didn't come to graduation. Maya had a gallery opening for her college art show that same day. In my first life, I'd been devastated. In this one, I was relieved. Grandma came instead, with Margaret and 3 other women from her set, all of whom made a point of congratulating me loudly and publicly, making sure everyone knew I had support. My parents noticed. Finally, they noticed. The conversation happened in August, 2 months after the beach party disaster. They summoned me home for a family meeting, their voices tight with the kind of anger that came from losing something they'd taken for granted. I arrived at their estate, and it was an estate, 5 bedrooms and 3 acres, all paid for with money Grandma had loaned them 20 years ago that they'd never paid back, dressed differently than they were used to seeing me. Grandma had taken me shopping, taught me how to dress with quiet elegance. Simple clothes, expensive fabrics, nothing flashy, but everything perfect. The kind of style that whispered old money rather than screaming new. My mother's eyes narrowed when she saw me. She knew those labels. Where did you get that dress? Grandma took me shopping. I smiled. She said I needed proper clothes for the events we've been attending. Events? My father frowned. What events? Oh, didn't I mention? I've been accompanying Grandma to some of her social gatherings. Fundraisers, charity auctions, that sort of thing. She's been introducing me to her friends. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Those are our connections, my mother said, her voice shaking. I've been trying to get back into that circle for years and I didn't do anything, I said mildly. Grandma invited me. I said yes. I thought you'd be happy that someone in the family was spending time with her. Maya spends time with her, my father said. But his heart wasn't in it. We all knew the truth. Does she? When was her last visit? Silence. I see Grandma twice a week. I run her errands, I help her with household things. I listen to her stories. I do the things a granddaughter should do, not because of any inheritance, a lie, but a necessary one, but because I love her, and she appreciates that. She's turning you against us, my mother hissed. That manipulative old woman is poisoning you. Don't. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. Don't you dare talk about Grandma that way. She's shown me more love in 3 months than you have in 18 years. That's not fair, my father tried. We've always loved you. Have you? I looked at him directly. Tell me my birthday without checking your phone. He couldn't. Tell me what I'm majoring in, what my favorite color is, what I want to do with my life. Tell me anything about me that isn't related to how useful I am or how I compare to Maya. Neither of them could answer. I'm moving to the mountains, I said into the silence. Grandma has a lodge there and she's letting me use it while I finish my degree online. I start work at a law firm up there in September. Another thing Grandma had arranged, introducing me to a friend who needed someone organized and smart, and I'll be settling in permanently. You can't just leave, my mother said, but she sounded uncertain. Can't I? I'm 18, I have a job, a place to live, and a family member who actually cares about me. What's keeping me here? They had no answer for that either. I left my house keys on the coffee table on my way out. I'd already moved everything that mattered. September was a new beginning. I enrolled in online classes for business and law, working toward a degree that would let me manage Grandma's affairs eventually, and my own. The job at the law firm was entry-level, filing and phones mostly, but it got my foot in the door and taught me the language of contracts and litigation. More importantly, I was building my own network. Through Grandma's connections and my own work, I was meeting people, learning trades, understanding how real power functioned. Not the flashy Instagram fame power Maya chased, but the quiet generational power that moved markets and shaped policy. My family continued to call, but less frequently. They'd realized they'd lost something: access to Grandma's world, my free labor, the daughter they could rely on to never fight back, but they still didn't fully understand what they'd done wrong. In their minds, they'd treated Maya better because she deserved it more. I was just being difficult now, ungrateful, rebellious. Let them think that. I was done explaining. October brought the incident I'd been dreading and planning for, Grandma's fall. In my first life, she'd fallen on October 23rd at 3:47 p.m. I knew this because I'd been the one to find her at 5:15 when I came for our regular visit. I'd called 911, ridden in the ambulance, spent 6 hours in the hospital waiting room alone because my parents were too upset to come, and Maya was in class. That was the beginning of the end in my first life. Grandma had broken her hip, needed surgery, and months of recovery. My parents had swept in with power of attorney papers, promises of taking care of everything, and smiles that never reached their eyes. By Christmas, Grandma was in a facility, and I was the only one visiting her there too. This time, October 23rd at 3:47 p.m. found me at Grandma's house, as I was every Tuesday and Thursday. We were in the kitchen making soup, her recipe, the one she'd learned from her mother, when we heard the front door open. My parents. I'd been expecting them. What I hadn't expected was the locksmith trailing behind them. Mother, my mom said, her voice sticky sweet. We need to talk about your living situation. This house is too big for you. The stairs are dangerous, and we really think—" She stopped when she saw me at the stove. "What are you doing here?" "Making soup with Grandma." "What are you doing here with a locksmith?" "That's family business," my father said. "Maybe you should—" "She's my family," Grandma said quietly. She was in her chair by the window, the good one that caught the afternoon light. "More than you've been in a long time." "Mother, don't be ridiculous. We're here because we love you. We want to make sure you're safe. This house, these stairs, what if you fall?" "What if I do?" Grandma's voice was steel. "I've arranged for that possibility. I have medical alert systems, I have cameras, and I have a granddaughter who checks on me twice a week. What I don't need is you changing my locks." "We just want to be able to get in if something happens," my mother tried. "You have a key." "We've lost it." "No," I said, stirring the soup and not bothering to turn around. "You're planning something. You want access when she's not expecting you. Maybe to go through her papers? Set up another accident?" The silence was profound. "What did you just say?" My father's voice was dangerous. I turned off the stove and faced them. "I said accident in quotes, because we both know that loose carpet at the top of the stairs wasn't an accident. The one Dad installed 6 months ago that just happens to shift at the worst possible moment. The one that's exactly where an elderly woman would be most likely to lose her footing." My father's face went white. "How did you—" my mother started. "I fixed it," I said simply. 2 months ago, replaced the whole carpet, added railings, made it safe. Did you wonder why she hasn't fallen yet? Why your plan isn't working? "Plan? There's no plan!" My mother's voice was shrill. "How dare you suggest—" "I have it on camera," Grandma said softly. "Your husband installing that carpet, making sure it was loose enough to shift. I have his measurements, his tools, everything. My lawyer has a copy, so does my doctor, and the police chief, old family friend, lovely man." The color drained from both their faces. "Get out of my house," Grandma continued, her voice pleasant. "The locks are being changed. Yes, we scheduled this appointment. But you're not getting a key. And if anything happens to me, anything at all, those videos go public, along with copies of the loans you never repaid, the money you've stolen from me over the years, and a detailed accounting of exactly how you've manipulated and abused both your daughters." "Both?" my mother whispered. "You think I don't know what you've done to her?" Grandma gestured to me. "The years of neglect, the favoritism, the way you've systematically destroyed her confidence and stolen her opportunities? I have eyes, daughter. I have a brain. And I have a very good memory of what a real parent looks like. You are not it." My father grabbed my mother's arm. "We should go." "Yes," I agreed. "You really should." They fled. The locksmith finished his work, and Grandma and I finished making soup. November was quiet. My parents didn't call. Maya sent sporadic texts that I ignored. I worked, studied, and began to truly build my life in the mountains. The lodge was becoming a home. I'd painted every room, replaced the old furniture with pieces from estate sales that Grandma helped me choose, and set up a proper office where I could study and work. I had internet now, good internet, and a system of cameras that let me monitor not just the property, but also, with Grandma's blessing, her house in the city. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. The law firm had been impressed with my work and offered me a part-time position with more responsibility. I was learning contract law, estate planning, and the intricate dance of high society legal battles. My boss, Patricia, was one of Grandma's oldest friends and had stories about my mother that made my childhood make terrible sense. She was always jealous. Patricia told me over coffee one afternoon, "Your grandmother had breeding, beauty, and money. Your mother had 2 of the 3, and it ate at her. She thought marrying your father would give her access to everything, but your grandmother saw right through him. She offered them one loan, and told them they'd have to make their own way after that. They never forgave her. But they kept coming around. For appearances. and because they thought eventually they'd inherit. Your grandmother's been very careful about who knows what's in her will. Most people assume your mother will get everything as the only child, but wills can be complex. I smiled. I knew exactly what was in Grandma's will. She'd shown me. In my first life, my parents had gotten everything, and they'd promptly given most of it to Maya. In this life, well, things were different. December brought snow to the mountains and trouble to the city. Maya, it seemed, had gotten engaged. David, the same David from my first life, the one she'd stolen from me at that New Year's party that hadn't happened this time, had proposed at Thanksgiving. My mother called with the news, her voice triumphant, clearly expecting me to be jealous or upset. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it. "I hope they're very happy." You're not upset? I thought you liked him." "I've never met him, Mom. How could I like him?" True in this timeline. "I'm happy for Maya if she's happy." I wasn't lying. In this life, I'd never met David, never fallen for him, never had my heart broken by my sister's betrayal. He was a stranger to me, and Maya was welcome to him. Especially since I knew exactly how that relationship would end. He was charming, but terrible with money. And he had a gambling problem Maya would discover about 6 months into the marriage. In my first life, they'd divorced within 3 years, both of them blaming each other for their financial ruin. Not my circus, not my monkeys. "Oh," my mother said, sounding disappointed. "Well, the wedding is in June. You're invited, of course." "I'll check my schedule." I would not be attending. The new year came with a revelation. Grandma sat me down in January with her lawyer, Patricia, and a stack of papers. "I'm updating my will," she said. "You should know what's in it." In my first life, I'd found out at the reading after her death. Found out that I'd been left nothing, that even the anklet I'd treasured was legally Maya's because she'd been wearing it and my parents claimed Grandma had given it to her. Found out that I'd never mattered as much as I'd hoped. This time, I watched as Patricia laid out the papers. "Everything," Patricia said simply. "The estate in the city, the mountain lodge, the investment portfolios, the trust funds, the property holdings. Everything goes to you, with the condition that you maintain certain charitable giving requirements and keep the lodge in the family." "What about my mother?" "She gets a token amount, $1, so she can't claim she was forgotten." "And Maya?" "Nothing. She's not blood, not legally. Your mother's marriage to your father happened after Maya was born to another man. Your grandmother has no legal obligation to her." I hadn't known that. In my first life, I'd never learned that particular family secret. "Does Mom know?" "About Maya's parentage?" "She thinks no one knows." "Your grandmother has known since the beginning. She had a private investigator check when your parents asked for that loan. She chose not to make an issue of it because she thought your mother might grow into responsibility. But after everything," Grandma shook her head, "some people never grow." "And Dad?" "He knows. He married her anyway. Another reason your grandmother never trusted him. He was complicit in the lie." I sat back, processing. My entire childhood made more sense now. No wonder Maya was the golden child. She was proof of my mother's transgression, and spoiling her was a way of denying any guilt. No wonder I was the scapegoat. I was the legitimate grandchild, the heir, the constant reminder that Maya wasn't. When does this will take effect? It's effective now, but obviously we hope I'll be around for many years yet, Grandma said with a slight smile. However, you should know that if anything happens to me, you're protected. The will is ironclad. Patricia made sure of it. Bulletproof, Patricia agreed. I've been doing estate law for 40 years. Trust me when I say no one is breaking this will. February brought Maya's wedding plans into full dramatic focus. She called me directly for the first time in months, her voice sugar sweet. "Sissy, I'm picking bridesmaids. You have to be in my wedding." "That's kind of you, Maya, but I don't think..." "Please? It would mean so much to me, to us, to the family." There it was. The family card. In my first life, I'd caved every time. I'd been the bridesmaid, worn the unflattering dress she chose, paid for my own hair and makeup and a shower gift and a wedding gift, and watched as she got everything she wanted while treating me like staff. "I can't," I said. "I have work commitments that weekend. I'm sorry." "Move them. It's my wedding." "I can't move a court filing, Maya. I'm sorry. I'll send a gift." I hung up before she could argue. My mother called 10 minutes later. "How could you disappoint your sister like this?" "She'll have other bridesmaids. She won't miss me. But the pictures will be beautiful without me." "Mom, I have to go. I'm at work." Another thing I'd learned in this timeline: boundaries. The word no. The art of hanging up. March brought David to the mountains. He showed up at the lodge on a Saturday afternoon, claiming he wanted to meet me before the wedding, build family connections, all very proper and planned. My cameras had caught him scoping out the property for an hour before he knocked, which told me everything I needed to know about his real intentions. I let him in, served coffee, played the gracious host, and I listened as he laid out his pitch. "Maya talks about you all the time," he said, lies dripping like honey. "She feels terrible about the distance between you. She knows your family hasn't always treated you fairly." Interesting. So Maya was aware enough to know there was a problem, but not aware enough to change her behavior. "Family dynamics are complicated," I said neutrally. "They are, but I think... Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm marrying into this family, and I've done my research. Your grandmother is very wealthy, and there's going to be an inheritance eventually. Maya and your parents seem to think it's all coming to them, but I'm not so sure." "Why wouldn't it?" he smiled. "Because you're the one who visits her. You're the one in her will, or at least I assume you are. And I wanted to meet you, get a sense of you, maybe make an arrangement." "An arrangement?" "When your grandmother passes, many years from now, of course, there's going to be a will reading. There might be surprises. If you were to say, make sure Maya and I received our fair share, I could make it worth your while. A percentage, quiet and clean." Ah, there it was. He was trying to bribe me to steal from myself. I let him keep talking, let him dig his hole deeper, while a recording device in the coffee table caught every word. He pitched me on fraud, on manipulation, on cutting out my own mother if necessary. He had it all planned out. When he finally finished, I smiled. "That's a very interesting proposal, David. Let me think about it." Of course, of course." "Take your time. The wedding isn't until June." After he left, I sent the recording to Patricia with a note. "Might need this later." Her response was immediate. "Oh, we absolutely will." April was when everything started to accelerate. Maya found out about the will. I don't know how. Maybe she snooped, maybe someone talked, maybe she just put the pieces together. But she knew, and she was furious. She showed up at the lodge without warning, screaming before she even got out of the car. "You stole my inheritance. You manipulated Grandma. You're a scheming, selfish bitch." I stood on the porch and let her rant. When she finally ran out of breath, I said simply, "Did you ever visit her before you wanted something from her?" "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point. You want an inheritance from someone whose favorite tea you don't know, whose birthday you've missed for 3 years running, whose stories you've never listened to. Why do you think you deserve it?" "Because she's my grandmother too." "Actually," I said quietly, "she's not." Maya stopped mid-breath. "What?" "Grandma is Dad's mother. You're not Dad's biological daughter. So technically, she has no obligation to you at all. The fact that she included you in her life as long as she did was generous. The fact that you're not in the will is just accurate." I shouldn't have told her. It was cruel, even if it was true. But I was so tired of her entitlement, her rage, her absolute conviction that the world owed her everything. Maya's face went through several colors before settling on white. "You're lying." Ask mom, ask dad, or better yet, ask for a DNA test. I paused. Though I'd think carefully before you do that. Right now, dad still claims you. If you push this, if you make trouble, he might decide it's not worth it anymore. You're a monster, she whispered. No, I'm just done being your victim. She left. I filed a restraining order the next day, Patricia's suggestion, given Maya's escalating behavior. It was granted within a week. May brought Grandma's 85th birthday party, and it was spectacular. We held it at the lodge, which could accommodate the 50 guests from Grandma's set, plus catering and a small band. Margaret handled the invitations. Patricia managed the legal paperwork. Yes, legal paperwork for a party, because when you're dealing with old money, everything is documented. And I organized everything else, from flowers to food to making sure Grandma's favorite. Chair was positioned perfectly on the porch for photos. My parents were not invited. Maya was legally barred from attending due to the restraining order. It was the most peaceful family event I'd ever experienced. Happy birthday, Grandma, I said as the sun set over the mountains, painting everything gold. Happy rebirth, little bird, she replied. And I wondered if she somehow knew, if she'd seen the change in me and understood that her granddaughter had died and been reborn with purpose. But all she said was, "Thank you for this, for all of it, for being the heir I always hoped for." June arrived with Maya's wedding and my absence from it. I sent a gift, a set of kitchen knives, expensive and sharp. The card read, "For cutting ties cleanly, congratulations." Maya sent it back with a note that was mostly profanity. I donated the knives to a culinary school and moved on with my life. According to Grandma's spies, because of course she had spies, old money always does, the wedding was a disaster. David got drunk and hit on 3 bridesmaids. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. My father gave a toast about family loyalty that everyone found uncomfortable. And Maya spent the reception checking her phone, probably hoping I'd changed my mind and shown up. I hadn't. I'd been hiking 20 miles away, watching eagles hunt over crystal lakes, breathing air so clean it hurt. I'd never been happier. July brought the lawsuit. My parents, with Maya and David's encouragement, sued Grandma for their rightful inheritance. They claimed elder abuse, undue influence, manipulation of a vulnerable woman. They claimed I'd isolated her, poisoned her against them, stolen what was rightfully theirs. Patricia laughed when she read the filing. This is going to be fun. The case took 4 months to wind through the system, and it was indeed fun, if your definition of fun includes watching entitled people destroy themselves in court. Patricia presented evidence. So much evidence. Bank records showing the loans my parents had never repaid. Emails where they discussed how to manage Mother's assets for her benefit, in ways that clearly meant their benefit. The videos of my father installing the loose carpet. Documentation of every missed visit, every forgotten birthday, every instance where they'd chosen Maya over Grandma. And then there was the testimony. Margaret testified about the beach party, about Maya's fake anklet, about my mother's attempts to commit social fraud. Catherine Westbrook testified about my family's reputation in society, or lack thereof. Patricia testified as both lawyer and friend, detailing years of watching my parents manipulate and scheme, and I testified about my childhood. Every forgotten birthday, every missed event, every time I'd been compared to Maya and found wanting, every instance where I'd been used, overlooked, and dismissed. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, listened to everything. Then she dismissed the case with prejudice and a warning. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, your case is not only without merit, it's offensive. You've demonstrated through your own evidence that you are exactly the kind of people a parent should exclude from their will. You've shown a pattern of financial manipulation, emotional abuse, and neglect that would make any reasonable person question your character. Your lawsuit is dismissed. You will pay all court costs, and if you file any similar action against Mrs. Robinson or her estate in the future, I will personally ensure you face sanctions for harassment. My mother cried. My father's jaw clenched. Maya, sitting in the gallery, looked like she wanted to disappear. And David looked like he was calculating the cost of a divorce. I felt nothing but relief. August was quiet. My family was silent. No calls, no texts, no dramatic visits. Just blessed silence. I turned 21 in this timeline, 2 years after I died in the last one. I celebrated with Grandma, Patricia, Margaret, and a dozen other women who'd become more of a family than I'd ever had by blood. We had champagne on the lodge porch and watched shooting stars. To new beginnings, Grandma toasted. To survival, I replied. To victory, Patricia added. We drank to all three. September brought a surprise. Grandma decided to move to the lodge permanently. I'm tired of the city, she said. I'm tired of those stairs, even fixed. I'm tired of being alone in that big house. Can an old woman move in with her granddaughter? This is your house, Grandma. I'm the one moving in with you. Then we'll be roommates. I'll take the downstairs bedroom. My knees aren't what they used to be. We spent the month moving her belongings, sorting through 85 years of accumulated treasures and memories. We donated furniture, gave away clothes, and packed up the things that mattered. The city house went on the market and sold within a week to a young family with 3 kids who promised to fill it with laughter. I helped Grandma paint her new bedroom the color of sunset. Happy? I asked. Happier than I've been in years, she replied. October came, and with it, the month when Grandma had died in my first life. The date loomed in my mind. October 23rd, the beach, the heart attack, the pills I'd never found. We were sitting on the porch that morning, drinking coffee and watching fog roll through the valleys below when Grandma said, "You've been tense all week. Want to talk about it?" It's nothing. It's something. You keep checking your phone, watching me like I might vanish. What's wrong? I couldn't tell her about the rebirth, about dying and coming back. But I could tell her a version of the truth. I had a nightmare last week about losing you, about not being there when you needed me. It's made me paranoid. She reached over and took my hand. Little bird, I'm not going anywhere. I'm healthy, I'm happy, and I'm exactly where I want to be. Whatever you're afraid of, it's not happening. October 23rd came and went. Grandma was fine, better than fine. She was thriving in the mountain air, making friends with the locals, joining a book club in town. The date that had haunted me for 2 lifetimes passed without incident. I'd changed the timeline. I'd saved her. November brought news. Maya was getting divorced. 4 months of marriage, and David had already gambled away her savings and slept with her best friend. She'd kicked him out and filed papers. She called me, Grandma said one evening, crying, asking if she could come stay with us for a while. What did you say? I said no. I told her she was an adult and she needed to handle her own choices. I offered to pay for a therapist, one who might help her understand why she keeps making destructive decisions. She hung up on me. I'm sorry. Don't be. Some people have to hit bottom before they'll look up. Maybe this is her bottom. And if it's not, then she'll fall further. That's not our responsibility. It was harsh. It was also true. December brought my parents to the mountain, one last desperate attempt. They showed up 3 days before Christmas, looking older and smaller than I remembered. My father's hair was more gray. My mother's face was tight with the kind of stress that comes from financial pressure. I let them in because Grandma asked me to. We sat in the living room I'd furnished with estate sale finds and inherited treasures, and they looked around like they were cataloging every asset. We're here to apologize, my father said. Are you? I kept my voice neutral. Things have been difficult, my mother started. The lawsuit was expensive. We've had to downsize. Your father lost his job because his employer found out he'd installed unsafe flooring in an elderly woman's home with intent to cause harm, I interrupted. Yes, I heard. Funny how that security footage made the rounds. That wasn't meant to hurt her. Yes, it was. You've been trying to hurt her for years. To control her, to steal from her, to push her into a situation where you could take everything. And when that didn't work, you tried to use the legal system. And when that didn't work, you're here. But you're not here to apologize. You're here because you're finally facing consequences, and you want me to make them stop. My father's jaw clenched. You've always been ungrateful. We gave you everything. A converted garage, hand-me-downs from Maya, criticism and neglect and emotional abuse. Yes, thank you so much for everything. We're your parents, my mother tried. Doesn't that mean anything? It should. But you taught me it doesn't. You taught me that the people who share your blood can be your worst enemies, that family is something you choose, not something you're born into. So I'm choosing, and I'm not choosing you. They sat in silence. Then Grandma spoke from her chair by the window. You should leave now, both of you. You're not welcome in this house. You're not welcome in our lives. And when I die, which won't be for many years yet, I plan to spite you with longevity. You'll receive your dollar and nothing more. That's my final word. They left. We never saw them again. The years that followed were everything my first life should have been. I finished my degree, passed the bar exam, and joined Patricia's firm as a junior partner. I specialized in estate law, helping other grandmothers protect their assets from ungrateful children, helping other scapegoat grandchildren find their footing and their strength. Grandma lived to 92, lucid and sharp until the very end. When she died, it was peacefully in her sleep, in her bedroom with the sunset-colored walls, with me holding her hand. The will reading was everything she'd promised, everything to me, with detailed instructions for the charitable giving she'd established. $1 to my mother, nothing to Maya. And a final letter that Patricia read aloud. To my daughter, I loved you, but I could not condone what you became. To Maya, you were never my responsibility, but I tried to care for you anyway until you made it impossible. To my beloved granddaughter, you were the heir I always wanted. You listened, you cared, you chose love over greed. Everything I have is yours because you're the only one who deserves it. Use it wisely, use it well. And remember, family is what you make it. My mother contested the will, of course. She lost, of course. Maya tried to sue for emotional damages. She lost too. David tried to claim he was owed something as Maya's ex-husband. The judge laughed him out of court. I took everything Grandma had built, everything she'd left me, and I made it matter. I established scholarships for scapegoat children, for kids in abusive families, for anyone who needed a chance to escape. I kept the lodge and turned it into a retreat center for survivors of family abuse. I maintained Grandma's charitable giving and expanded it. And I lived. I'm 32 now, sitting on the porch of my mountain lodge, watching the sun set over peaks that belong to me. I have a husband who adores me, a daughter who will never doubt she's loved, and a life built on the ashes of who I used to be. I haven't spoken to my parents in 8 years. I haven't seen Maya in longer. I heard she moved to another state, married again, had kids. I hope she's happy. I hope she learned something. But it's not my problem anymore. Sometimes I take out the real anklet, the one Grandma gave me, the one Maya tried to steal but never actually had. I wear it when I hike, when I swim in the mountain lakes, when I sit on this porch and count my blessings. The little bells chime with each step, a reminder. I died once. I was reborn. And I chose revenge that looked like healing, justice that looked like boundaries, victory that looked like peace. Maya wore my anklet to the beach, thinking she could steal my identity, my inheritance, my life. But by then, I'd already moved to the mountains, and from up here I could see everything.